Hey everybody, welcome into another episode of Flag for Discussion. My name is Farbod Merkazi, here as always with Jace Hatfield. This episode is going to be a little bit different though.
Farbod and I have bachelor parties, weddings, soon to be honeymoons. It's that time of the year for us.
It's the season of life. It's not even just the time of the year.
Hopefully our one and only weddings and our one and only honeymoons. But this episode will be a best of edition of Flags for Discussion. So we're going to have some of our best clips from the season, playoff talk, our best moments, and more.
Yeah, so basically, as what Jay said, whatever we cut for this week's episode is going to be in the title. Hopefully, you'll sit back, relax, enjoy. Make sure you check us out on all of our socials, Flag for Discussion, on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Twitter at F4Discussion and TikTok at Flag4Discussion. We will be back soon to react live to everything college football. This is just, like we said, a season of life for us. So thanks so much for tuning in. We are pleased to be making Flag for Discussion history, welcoming in one of the OG listeners, one of the OG supporters, just an absolute stunning man himself, Dylan Altman. How's it going?
I'm good. Thank you for the high praise. I'm glad to be here. Obviously, a longtime listener. Super excited to be a part of this. I'll start with Go Ducks because we're winning it all, right? Like that's the whole reason you brought me on here was to just push as much propaganda as I possibly could about Oregon. So
that is precisely, and also the second reason we brought you on is like I think the attractiveness rate of like level of this podcast has just went up with you on here.
Whoa.
You're
guys are
blessing
both
us with a beautiful
gentlemen.
mustache, something that I don't know if I could pull off quite that well.
I don't think I would stay engaged if I just went with the mustache. I think my fiance would not like it.
Fair enough.
Yes, we did bring you on to talk some first round college football playoff. We brought you on to talk JMU Oregon. But before we do that, I just want to plug you. You can find him on this, whatever you want to call it, CoC Network, the CoC Network. I can say that because that's literally what it's called. TikTok, IG, Twitter, YouTube. It's CoC_network or like a combination of those things. We'll give you the full plug afterwards. Dylan and his crew do an extremely underrated job talking footy, but or as in the States we call it soccer. But Dylan, I'll give you a chance once we're done talking American football to give yourself a little plug there.
Sure. We'll table it till the end. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Well, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're at least admiring Dylan from afar right now, you see the sweatshirt he's got on, and you also know the topic we're about to talk. JMU, Oregon. Oregon's a 20.5 favorite Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern on TNT. Look, I was trying to find ways to break this game down, make it like not. I think interesting is the wrong word, but make it come up with keys to the game. How is Oregon scared or not? And the fan in me definitely finds reasons to be scared of it. But like the actual just college football analyst in me is like trying to find ways to make it interesting. So here's a question I heard this week. What is JMU's path to winning? What is JMU's path to an upset? And either of you.
It sounds like I hate to be like they have no chance, but almost like play loose, have fun, enjoy the moment. Like, don't think about it too much. Like, I know it sounds like you have no chance, but I feel like if you're an underdog and you play tense and you play nervous and you feel like an underdog, that's kind of, you come out, you stumble your first drive, you get up a quick big play touchdown, you're out of it. I feel like you got to play loose, take the deep breath. I think there's a JMU kid was interviewed and asked about what it's going to be like to go play in Autzen. They've never played in a stadium like that. And it was kind of cool to hear him talk about how, like, when him and his teammates were kids, despite growing up in the South, in the East Coast, they were like diehard Duck fans because they would see them on TV and they thought they were so cool. So he was like, in a weird way, it relaxes us to like know, like, oh, I'm getting this really cool opportunity. But he's like, it also makes you realize how big of what you're about to do is, and you got to remember to calm yourself down. So I think step one is you can't go into it thinking, oh my God, I'm playing at Oregon in the college football playoff. You got to go into it thinking like, all right, I've played so many football games. It's just another football game, another chance to go out and execute.
Yeah, and I think there's an aspect of this whole thing where we can have a long discussion about whether or not JMU or Tulane deserve to be in the playoff. I think that's an off-season conversation and whatnot. And we also know that, like, if they weren't given an automatic bid, there would be litigation against the committee in the college football playoff if the group of five wasn't included, because we want to include people. But I don't know. I was watching some of the videos of just JMU was posting, the football team. They just got some of their, like, the kicks and the gear for the game, and they were so stoked. And it's not like you feel good for. It's not like the little brother syndrome where, like, they get a cool pair of shoes, you feel good for them, but it's like you're also like, they absolutely deserve this moment. They're a damn good football team for their level.
Yeah, they earned it. They worked hard to get there. I mean, remember, like, when we saw the Ducks, however many years ago it was, when they played in their first playoff game and the 14 playoff started. And, like, I remember seeing the Ducks open that kind of gear up and thinking, oh, I need to buy one of those hoodies. Oh, that diamond swoosh is so cool. You know, they're probably going through those same emotions.
All right, Dylan, what level of confidence, like, what's your score prediction? I know that's normally a last second thing, but, like, how do you see this game playing out as the Duck fan that you are?
Well, I'm scared to death just because of everything that you guys just said. Like, it's a team playing with house money against a team that has everything to lose, right? Like, Oregon's got everything to lose. If they don't turn this corner, then it's like Dan Lanning's saga of, like, what's gone wrong here? We've got the coordinators leaving again. Like, there's a lot of bad things that could happen from Oregon losing this game, but my confidence level is still pretty high. We're clearly the better team. There's a reason that they're a 19, 20-point favorite. I'd like to see us drop 50 if I had to get greedy. Like, I'd like to see us win like 50-3 if absolutely possible. Like, I want to see them steamroll into this playoffs with momentum the same way we kind of got steamrolled last year. You know, you got to start high and you got to push through to make it to the very top of this sport. So let's go with like 56-3.
That kind of leads me into another question I had for you. What do you need to see out of the Ducks to feel, yeah, this team can win a national championship, if anything, in this first game?
I sent you guys the picture in the group chat. I'd like to see them healthy, and I'd like to see guys get reps. Like, those are the two things that I need to see coming out of this game, because I honestly think that they have a top 5 quarterback in the country, right? Dante Moore is just an elite level quarterback. Right. He could be in the conversation for best quarterback in the country. And he's already proven on multiple stages this year that he's the best quarterback in specific moments. And I think that so long as you can get him into spots, right, you can get him into a 2-minute drill. I don't think there's anyone better in the country. So if you can get his stars lined up with him for the first time in like 2 months, that's really what I want to see. I want to see the wide receiving core play with Dante Moore one time before we actually start playing top level competition. The rest of the team has kind of already performed at a super elite level for 13 weeks. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is just health.
Do you think the coordinators, and I know my camera's gotten blurry, by the way, this completely normal thing happens, but at least once a show for us. Do you think that the fact that Oregon's walking into this, offensive coordinator Will Stein has taken the Kentucky head coaching job, defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoy has taken the Cal head coaching job, they've both said all the right things. They've both said, like, over my dead body, am I going to leave that group of young men, that coaching staff, to come to hear the jobs that they accepted to start right away instead of making sure we see the season through? Do you think that's going to have any impact on the ceiling for the Ducks this year?
I hope not. I think Dan Lanning's a good enough coach that he can kind of weather that storm. And I think he's already had experience with it in the past. I think is the one thing that makes me feel a little more confident in this situation, is he maybe will take more of the reins in certain situations where maybe in the past he hasn't. But ultimately, this is just the new college football. Like, how isn't JMU's coach going to UCLA at the end of this? So, like, everybody's coach is deciding to just jump ship. If you're a good coach, you're leaving to a better school. And the carousel of coaching, I mean, Michigan's still not got a coach. Like, I think it's just the modern college football world, and you got to deal with it. That's kind of where I'm at with that.
I agree. And I think, like, it sounds like Oregon's going to be promoting from within for offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator positions. which I think bodes well. Like they've been in the room and they're obviously going to be helping out with Tosh and Will and probably learning from them. But to have the continuity and to know, okay, well, at least the guys who are going to supplement these coordinators leaving are in the building and have been, I think that helps ease the tension that might come from losing both your coordinators versus if we were to have to go hire outside, those people wouldn't be in the building. And then it feels like a little bit more pressure on Tosh and Will, but it's nice to know they don't. And they're doing the bags under the eyes. Like they look like they haven't slept.
Yeah,
Which
right.
part of me is almost like, hey, like maybe tonight's the night you go sleep 14 hours. Because before that game, I want you at least a little rested before you're calling plays out there.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, I think Tosh genuinely doesn't sleep. Like I think the mentality that guy has, if you hear him talk, I genuinely think that this is just normal for him. And he mentioned in his press conference this week that he locks his phone away so Cal doesn't contact him, and his wife knows how to get in touch with him if there's an emergency. Like that guy is a lunatic, and I love every bit of it. But like you see Will Stein, that guy is about to go into the SEC after the Oregon season's over. And I think I only sent it to you, Jace, but the picture, just a screenshot of his press conference this week, previewing this game, his eye bags might have been like bowling balls. Like that guy genuinely has not slept, and it's not normal for him.
Yeah, they would make you check those things in. Those aren't carry-ons. That's how big they were. I have kind of a fun question for the two of you here, and this might have to do with the health, but if you could bring back any former Oregon player for this playoff run, anyone come to mind? Are you trying to fill a hole, or are you just going for most fun, best player? What's the thought process there?
That's tough. I'm going to need a second with that one. So far, buddy, you can go for it.
So how I normally answer Jace's fun questions, I kind of just talk myself through until I get an answer to Dylan. So my answer, I was like, okay, do you want a quarterback? You could bring back Justin Herbert. You could bring back Dan Fouts. You could bring back Mariota. But those guys are super successful, super great in the NFL. What is the increase level college-wise from them to Dante Moore? And then I was thinking, okay, maybe D'Anthony Thomas, LaMichael James. But I was like, okay, our run game's pretty good too. So then now I'm thinking you need that like game wrecker on the defensive line. You need like a DeForest Buckner. You need a Eric Armstead. Or if you're talking about right now in the NFL, Christian Gonzalez at corner.
He's sick.
That guy, just with the rest of the young secondary, would be ridiculous. And I don't know. I don't think I'd bring back any receivers. At Penei Sewell, if he was healthy for the Lions, I think he would just lock down the entire left side of the offensive line. I don't know. That was a cop-out answer for me.
I think you said all the right answers. You just kind of packaged them all in one. I think Gonzalez is the right answer because we're on a collision course to playing Ohio State, right? And you're gonna have to have someone mark the best wide receiver in the world. Like I'm not even gonna say just the country. He's the best wide receiver in the world. So I don't know how the heck you guard him when you get to that point, and maybe it's just the PTSD talking. But like, give me one of the best corners, in Oregon history, and then he's been that good in the NFL. Yeah, give me Christian Gonzalez. That's a great shout.
Yeah, I like that one. Christian Gonzalez came to mind. I was going defensive line route. I was thinking like if we take Eric Armstead and he's just
right.
I feel like the difference between the size of a defensive tackle in the NFL versus college kids they're huge now. But then you go look at the speed, athleticism, the quickness, the intelligence of some of the guys in the NFL, especially because he's he's probably pushing around 30 years old now. So I was like, I bet he's got like that experience. He's got the dad strength now. Like he could throw around some O lines. I like Christian Gonzalez because that does scare me. My thinking was similar to you, Dylan, of when you get deep in the playoffs, I feel good about our offense being able to score. The defense is what would worry me in those big games. So that's where I was going to shore up.
All right. So on that note, I saw a tweet. I wish I saved it so I could credit the guy. But I saw a tweet earlier today that said, how many Myles Garretts do I need to put on JMU for them to be favored over Oregon? So how many Myles Garretts can you put on JMU to be favored over Oregon?
2 to 5.
Can I say 1? Miles Garrett's the best football player I think I've ever seen with my own two eyes.
True.
Like,
can he play? He could play both ways, I think. How are his hands? That's a helpful.
Yeah, that's a good question. Just give him the ball, see how far he can run. Probably 2's the right answer, because if you stacked him up on both sides of the line, like, how are you running or doing anything on offense with 2 Miles Garretts?
Tush push, every play.
Tush push every play. I like that.
They wouldn't even put him on the line. They would just tell him, like, "Hey, hover back here. You're still faster than everybody. Like, you're gonna get there."
That guy's such a freak.
That guy's such a freak. Just beg to get out of this game. I'm hurt. Sorry, Brock. Get in there.
I'm checking it down every 2 seconds. The ball is not in my hands for very long if Miles Garrett's on the opposing side of the field.
I think you guys are losing the plot. I think we would bring back like the wing T. Like, just make sure everyone's just swallowing up this one defensive lineman, and then try to get out of there with like a 3 to 4 point win.
If they get multiple hypothetical Miles Garrett's, then I'm changing my Christian Gonzalez or DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead answer to Penei Sewell, because that's our only chance if that's the case. But on the in the Twitterverse still, I think a very surprising outcome of the JMU Oregon game is the Twitter memes, especially from, I want to shout out JMU Sports News. That account has been fantastic. JMU fans have been fantastic. I was not prepared. Like, coming to the Big Ten, as we know, Oregon has a massive Twitter presence, and we're fans of them, so it's funny for us. Our fan base can be pretty unbearable in terms of they like to troll everyone. Like, it's just, if you see bad Oregon fans, just know they're trolling you. Like, that's their thing.
None of them are serious.
Yeah, and a lot of Big Ten teams like either didn't exist, like Minnesota. I didn't see a single tweet from them. Or you had like fan base that didn't get the rage bait. JMU has been above and beyond, a funnier version of us. All credit to them. Yep. I didn't know they were like that.
Yeah, I didn't either. Did you see the slow-mo video? Like, they picked it from like Duck versus Us, and they were like, "Wow, if they're playing this slow, like, we got a good shot." Yeah, they're a class act. A level above everybody else so far this season. Like you said, I think the Big Ten's definitely a little more traditional with their Twitter coverage, and everyone's like, "Oh, football," and we're not like that. And JMU is definitely, they're just not like that either. So, yeah, JMU. Sorry, I said JMU. Thinking of
today, Fox College Football tweeted out a graphic of the 5 stars, 4 stars, and they call it 3 stars and under other, and comparing the roster balance of Oregon versus JMU. So Oregon has 6 5-stars, 52 4-stars, 51 other. JMU has 0 5-stars, 3 4-stars, 109 other. And JMU Sports News tweets out, Oregon's inability to recruit other remains a glaring weakness of the Dan Lanning era. Thank you for spotlighting, Fox. Like, their entire humor is perfect. Like, and I actually was listening to one of their podcasts because they had former Oregon offensive lineman. He's now in the media, does a lot of stuff, Jeff Schwartz, on their show. And like, yeah, they want to win, but they're also like, I want to have fun. Or I want to celebrate the fact that we're here. And honestly, Jeff, like, speaking more on the game itself, Jeff basically came out and said, like, if you want me to be honest or nice, I'll be honest first. And every player on that Oregon offensive side and the defensive side will be the best player JMU has played up until this point. Doesn't matter who they're squaring up with. So, I don't know. the game itself, I'm curious how... Actually, let's get into game script. I'm curious how aggressive the Ducks are going to be. Everyone online, everyone in the media, everyone who gets paid to do what we're doing right now has been talking about, is like, Oregon's just going to drub them. They're going to be up 28-0 before we know it. It's not going to be a chance. And I'm not saying that won't happen, because I fully expect Oregon to win this game and probably cover. I just know, as our history watching the Oregon Ducks, there's always been something that's like been the speed bump in the game, and like the game looks closer than we think, or there's some trick play. We got a little cute. For both of you, how do you expect this game to actually go?
Start us off.
You go, Pritchett. Man, this is tough. I want to say that they take the ball first, and they're going to look to punch us in the mouth because that's what they should do, right? They're the underdog. If you can play with house money and get up a score or score 3 points just miraculously, like that's what you should do. For Oregon, I'd like to see them keep it simple. Don't reveal a whole lot. I think that you can save that for later. I think you run the ball and you control the clock. I said 50-3 in the opening. I'd much rather them just dominate and win like 24-0. If I'm being completely honest, and control the ball for 30 minutes. I don't really need to see a whole lot. I know what this team is. I don't need to see them prove it against JMU. But will they get a little fancy with it? Lanning's kind of a sicko. I totally expect him to go out there and try to make a statement. So we'll probably go for the explosives right away.
Yeah. I feel like we'll see a deep shot or two early, just to kind of like, just lack of better words, kind of hang your nuts on him a little bit. I think, like to your point with Dan Lanning being a sicko, I think he'll want to just have that big play early to kind of say like, "Yup, we're Oregon." But I feel like once we settle into the game, probably mid-second quarter, if the Ducks get up, I see a world where Dan just starts kind of trying to dominate in the trenches, similar to what you were saying with controlling the game. Because the real edge here is going to be in the line of scrimmage. JMU has fantastic athletes. They're really good at running the football. They have athletic quarterback. They have athletic wide receivers, running backs. But it's going to be in the trenches where Oregon's going to feel like we are bigger, stronger, we're more prepared, communication's better, technique is better. And I think it also is nice because that's the edge, but that's an easy way to not reveal your hands, right? It's an easy way to not let Texas Tech see how truly healthy DeCorian is, or Evan Stewart if he gets into the game. Maybe show him in there so Texas Tech's now nervous, but it's a nice way to say they don't know what you're going to get out of them. We're not going to show all our cards. I expect Jordan Davison to have 15-plus carries. I expect Noah Whittington to be up there with him around 15 to 20. I would love if we had 70 carries in this game between a slew of running backs averaging just 6 yards a punch. It's going to be fantastic. Yeah, the weather, too. That's a whole nother story. It sounds like there's going to be flood warnings in Eugene.
It's flood warning right now in Eugene. Like right now in Eugene, I'm looking at the weather. It's 54 degrees, flood warning, and one more expected until at least tonight, and then continuing through potentially Saturday. It might clear out a little bit before Saturday, but I'll just say this. One thing that makes me feel good. Okay, it sounds like a cop-out again, because everything about this matchup makes me feel good for Oregon. Don't get me wrong. But one thing that makes me feel good as a anxious fan that I am is I know if nothing's working, that run game will still be able to put points on the board and control the game. And I don't know if that's going to be continuing for the rest of the playoffs. If they keep advancing and they win this game, they advance against Texas Tech. I don't know how long that run game will continue to go. But I know if it's windy, if it's rainy, if it's just been a couple of weeks off since their last game and Dante and the offense started out a little jittery, a little slow, a little rusty, I know that run game's going to take care of business.
It's a game like this you really appreciate not having the bye week. We've kind of talked about the Oregon not being super healthy, and this is because of the playoff. We're now getting injury reports, which you normally don't in college football. All of our players that we've been worried about, and if they're healthy or not, are just going to be questionable until game day. So it's not super helpful, but it's nice to have the tune-up game. I know last year we were all down about that. It's nice to know, okay, let's get healthy. Let's see where the healthy players are at. Is DeCorian Moore truly able to give us 60 minutes? Maybe he's going to get fatigued after 2.5 quarters. It's nice to have this game, get everybody back on the same page, get at home one last time, shake off the 3 weeks of rust, and then get going into a Texas Tech game. And knock on wood, you don't want to overlook JMU, but I think it's safe to assume we're going to be in that Texas Tech game, and it's going to be nice to have the rust out of the way. So as a team that's kind of banged up, looking to get healthy, you definitely feel the benefit of having the tune-up game. And that's something that I don't want to take for granted, because I've been on the other end of how much it sucks to not have. So I want to make sure I'm appreciating the first game.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, especially for those wide receivers. There's nothing like getting hit in football, right? Like they always say that when they come back into preseason, the one thing that you can't replicate is getting hit in the game. And half of these dudes are going like essentially back into a preseason here, where it's like You haven't played in a month. Like, go get just leveled. I almost appreciate if they just went out there and took a shot where they weren't expecting it, just to get back into that game state. Because there's no acceleration period from not playing to we're in a bowl game trying to make it to a title. Like, that's crazy levels of stuff there. So, I agree.
And just to bring things all back full circle, you, Dylan, mentioned that one of the things you want from to see from this game is just to see the team get healthy. And we can't go a whole 25 minutes that we have so far without mentioning the guys themselves. De'Cory Moore's been out for over a month. Gary Bryant Jr. has been out for about that same amount of time. Evan Stewart been out since May. I'm not sure how many of them are going to play on Saturday. I would imagine they're going to try to get whatever, but I honestly think, like, if you see the practice tape that, like, Dan Lanning was trolling about, like, putting those guys out there, but we saw De'Cory and Gary Bryant at least return some punts in the brief 15 minutes that the reporters were able to watch practice. I don't know where Evan Stewart is, but the fact that for the first time in a very long time in Oregon history, they're getting their healthiest for the playoffs, that's huge. We have two questions to round it out for you. I'm going to ask the first one. Jace has his prepared. If it's not the Ducks, Dylan, who's your national title winner?
I'm going to go with Ohio State repeating. I think they have the best player in football. And for me, I think that means a lot because in the biggest moments of the biggest game, if you can find the best player in football on offense, you can score at will. He's proven now through 2 seasons that he can score at will, and they've got a Heisman candidate. They had a Heisman candidate this year, and I think that there's something to losing a game, right? And losing in the fashion that they lost in a championship game that gives you an edge later on in seasons, and they've just got the pedigree now, and they've got the best player. That's usually how I base my fandom is, like, if my team doesn't win, who's got the next best guy? And then I roll from there. So
if you were to make a top 20 list, Ohio State, not only do they have one, they might have 5, 6, 13, 15, 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
You're looking at mock drafts for the NFL right now. I think Ohio State's mocked to have 3 guys in the top 10.
It's ridiculous. And that's every year. And so, like, my pick is just picking, like, a betting favorites. Like, this is just some guy picking the minus 5,000. Like, if I had to pick the other team that's not my team, like, that's a decent shot.
I mean, yeah, I think the question is how would they show up if they squared up against Indiana again, right? But yeah. I don't think you want to see that. I think you want to see this Ducks team move on. Putting a pin on this game itself. Are we all picking Oregon to win and cover?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now that we all said that almost in unison, Jace, you had a question for Dylan.
I do, and I want you to have an opportunity to tell some of our listeners too about the stuff you're putting out on the CoC Network.
Thanks.
But before you do that, I have kind of a twofold question. Who's your boring World Cup champion? And then do you have a dark horse? So there's a lot of people throwing some dark horse names out there. Do you have any unique ones?
Oh man, my boring World Cup winner. I'm gonna go with France. I think that they were just there against Argentina. They have the best player in the world, right? Kylian Mbappe is the best player in the world, and on any given moment, he can take over a match. It's very similar to the Ohio State argument here, so that's my boring pick. They just have the best squad. Dark horse is tough. I think there's a couple of teams that could make a run. I think Morocco is really good. They proved it last time. They're just a really solid squad.
Wow.
They've got the best right back in the world in Hakimi, so if you haven't watched any footy and you need one person to watch, the guy's electric. But other than that, I think the World Cup is one of those things where dark horses don't really exist. Like, a quarterfinals or a semifinals appearance is like, that's where we're aiming for, right? So, like, I'd love to say the U.S. I really hope we get a favorable run and we're able to make a quarters. I guess they'd be my other dark horse just because home field advantage. But yeah, I'm going to stick with Morocco. Morocco is definitely
I feel like that's the popular name that I've been hearing thrown around. They've been playing good soccer lately. Good footy, maybe is what I should be calling it.
Good footy.
And then how do we get Erling Haaland to become Eric Haaland and move to the United States? And
you know what?
Play in the red, white, and blue.
Gosh, that would make us the best team in the world. I don't know how we got it. It's impossible now unless we get his DNA and we clone him. That's what I'm thinking. We just clone Erling Haaland. Yeah, somebody's got to be making the cloning technology. So we can get a cloning device. We'll take his DNA and Mbappe's DNA. We'll put it together. We'll make a superhuman, and he'll play up top for it.
We'll name him LeBron just to keep the
Just
LeBron legacy going.
Yeah, just for good measure. That's what we'll do. I like that.
All right. Well, we've taken up way too much of your time, Dylan. If you liked what you've heard, not only on football, but footy, you can find him on TikTok at CoC_network, on IG, CoC_network, Twitter, CoC_network, and then YouTube to see his devilishly handsome face, CoC_network _EST.24. Dylan, like I said, you are one of our OG listeners, one of our OG supporters. You and I went to high school together.
Yep.
The three of us went to college together. So this was meant to happen, and I'm proud to now say you are a friend of the program.
I am so happy that I finally got to do this. I mentioned a while ago, jokingly, that I was like, yeah, put me on to spew stuff about Oregon, and you actually hit me up about it. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like I'm definitely down to spew nonsense about Oregon. So I'm so happy that I was able to come on and be a part of the program and talk about football. I talk about the other football all the time, so it's good change of pace for me to get my American out and get that football talk going. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, get the eggs.
So I was happy some love. Thank you guys for having me. This is truly a pleasure. Also,
of course, anytime. Like I said, you're a friend of the program. I'm probably gonna ask you to come on later in the playoffs as well, as long as Oregon keeps doing well. Or if you want to just talk about your other team, your second team, Ohio State now, and definitely during the off season as we try to just have some fun doing this thing that we love. Thank you, Dylan.
We're so excited to bring in a very special guest, not only to Jason and I, not only for our past with him, but also for we're geeks about the sport, and the recent news that's come out about the sport put Jason and I's heads together, and we were like, who knows the most about this? Who can teach the audience and our friends and ourselves the most about this? And that's Quinn Van Horne. He's a senior designer at Van Horne Brands. I don't know how I almost forgot the name. It's in your last name.
You're not the first person. Don't worry.
I mean, if anyone forgets that after saying it, I don't even know what to say at that point. But thank you for joining us. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. It's also just really good to see you again.
I'm super excited to see both you guys. Really appreciate you reaching out. Yeah, it's a fun time, and uniforms are a big thing that I love doing in my life and talking about. So this is a perfect opportunity to see there's going to be some big cosmic changes in the sport, and it's important to have discussions and see what fans think, because that's where a whole lot of sentiment's going to come from.
Right. And like, to be honest with you, like a lot of this whole, like I said, Jason and I, we're geeks, and now that there's no absolute games to talk about, you can only talk about the transfer portal and NIL so much, and not even keep an audience interested, keep ourselves interested. So we take the jersey patches and we try to take it to another level. We've talked so much about this one-on-one, so there's a good amount of conversation there. Do you want to let everyone know a little bit of your backstory? Because you can do a lot better than I can.
Yeah, Quinn Van Horne, senior designer for Van Horne Brands for the last few years. I've had the amazing legacy of being able to work with my dad, who was a third-year Nike vice president, helped design the Oregon O and the Denver Broncos and all those pieces. When he decided to retire from Nike, we kind of picked up the things together and said, hey, we need to help be a part of shaping the new direction of the Oregon brand. So I had the really fortunate task to help design Oregon's new Generation O uniforms, including two of the special uniforms, the Stomp Out Cancer uniform with Sophia Lanning, and then the Shoe Duck uniform honoring the amazing legacy of Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman. Really amazing opportunity to be able to work on those things as uniforms, also work on plenty of other projects for U of O, including the new Oregon practice facility. It's currently going underway in Eugene, Oregon, right outside of Autzen Stadium in the Hatfield-Dowling complex. Have a lot of background working with the University of Oregon, and it's really fun. It's a fun time. It's really fun to work on all those things. And obviously, met Jason Farbode at University of Oregon when I was doing my undergrad degree, and also got my master's there. Just finished that in 2024. Hopefully that's a good enough background.
You're hired. I don't know if you're looking for a job, and I'm not really hiring for anything, but you're hired. I was driving home today, and this thought came to my mind. I was like, this conversation we're about to have is so Warsaw. And for anyone that doesn't know, it's our sports business club from back when we were in school, but it's to the nth degree that we want to have this conversation. And how we did it was like every project, we always tried to take it to the nth degree of like the nerdiest sport conversation any of us could have.
That's why you go to Oregon, right? You take sports and you bring it to the nth degree. That's why you're a Duck.
Exactly. Oh, taking this a little bit more national. So we talked about this on our Monday show, but the NCAA Division I cabinet officially approved the rule that allows corporate sponsorship logos, patches on uniforms, and equipment effective pretty much at the start of this season, August 1st, 2026. And then they said there's like an adjustment you can make. You can add a second one maybe by the playoff or bowl games potentially. So this got us thinking about not only sponsorship placement, client relationships. Jason, I want to let you kick off with like, where do we want to start with this conversation?
I'm glad you brought up Shoe Dog in your intro, because as Ducks, we know all of the intention that goes behind the vast majority of uniforms, and you hear a lot about it. But from a national perspective, I think Shoe Dog was one of the first uniforms where a lot of people got the feeling of getting to see for the first time a jersey made with true intention outside of the Pacific Northwest. I had friends here in Chicago and in the Midwest that reached out and just expressed how cool those uniforms were and how they never realized how much intention went into jerseys. And it actually inspired a couple of my friends to read Shoe Dog for the first time, which was kind of cool to hear. But, as Ducks, we kind of, not that we take that for granted, but we're used to seeing that. And on the other end of Shoe Dog, where there's a story being told throughout a uniform, you have corporate sponsorship, which I think oftentimes in the world isn't usually seen as a storytelling sponsorship. I think a lot of people just kind of do the Mr. Krabs money sign eyes and just kind of, that's how they see it. So
yeah,
let's start here, because this is a tough one. Corporate sponsorships don't always fit into a story of a brand. Nike in Oregon, it's a beautiful, that works. That's pretty fortunate. Not every school has that. What's the first thing you look at when you're trying to put together a brand and a school? What's the first kind of criteria you filter out?
Yeah, really good question. And I think a topic that has become super poignant in many conversations that I've had of how do we make room for sponsorship. You already look at some of the teams in the bowl games and you see themselves covered in patches. I don't know if you guys saw the Seahawks and the Patriots uniforms that got unveiled even for the Super Bowl coming up. There's a jersey that has like 5 patches on it, of an America 250 patch, Super Bowl patch, a Seahawks 50-year anniversary patch, captain's patch. It can become too cluttered.
It's NASCAR.
So it's NASCAR. Yeah. And those are the things you want to avoid. You want to be intentional. I think Jace, you brought up a really good point of intentionality behind a design is very important. You need to make sure that you are creating space for those type of conversations, but also making sure that the focus of the story is paramount to what you are trying to highlight. Shoe Duck is a fantastic example. Is we took every single part of that uniform and said, how can we tell a deeper story with this piece, more than it just being a helmet, more than it just being a patch, more than just being all these things. I can point to all of those elements and say, how can it fit within that type of narrative for that jersey? A lot of schools don't look at uniforms that way. I understand that. But I also think it comes back to a lot of times brand value is how can you try to be able to provide a jersey pants sponsor option that becomes an addition to your brand value rather than a subtraction? Because, yeah, a lot of people look at NASCAR, a lot of people look at European soccer, a lot of people look at many sports that feel like they've been infested by, all of the different pieces. I think that kind of like the thing that I keep stirring in my mind is how can that become a positive? The sport isn't going backwards. We aren't going back to 2007. We're not going back to 2002. We're not going back to 1992. How can we keep the momentum going forward? Because talk to any athletic department, talk to any athletic director. I will find it hard pressed to say, find one that doesn't say that revenue is an important piece. And you need to make sure that you're finding and keeping that revenue up as you keep going. So how are you going to be able to solve this problem, but also not tend for your brand value to be completely diluted in the process? And I think you have to look at philanthropic measures, local charities. How can you find organizations that you can partner with the university, even internally? Such as, I had the really cool opportunity to go to the Oregon-Michigan game in 2024. And I was really, I was like, wow, there isn't like sponsors. There's not the Safeway Shuffle. There's not all of these other pieces that, coincide with normal kind of sponsored venues. Like, no, we take pride in this being a clean venue. We're not going to bring in outside sponsors, but we are going to have things presented by the University of Michigan School of Medicine, for example. We are going to highlight some of our internal campus partners. Could that be something that lends itself in that way? Those are the interesting conversations to have there. And I think that there will be some schools that look at it as a pure capital play. How can I be able to get highest X dollar value that I can be able to reinvest in my program? And I think there are others that look at it as, how can I look to continue to have my sport and my jersey be revered space? For Van Horne Brands, we bring up the story of, when TVH was designing jerseys for the Kenya national Olympic team. He always brought up the story of, they came to him and said, no, more people are going to look at this singlet than our national flag. That is how important our jersey is to us. This is a huge representation of who we are in our country, and this needs to be spun into the design. I really think that that's a huge case of more people are going to look at jersey than a lot of pieces around your program, around your environment. How can that be an addition plus? And how can the inclusion of a sponsorship revenue and inclusion of a sponsorship patch lead to a greater brand value for a university, for its athletes, and better tell its story? That is, I think, where the true partners will create something special, and maybe some others might falter in the process.
We have, I know it's not amateur sports, but with professional sports in the U.S. specifically, we've seen, not the NFL, but I believe MLB, NHL, and the NBA all have jersey patches now. Not every team, but you see the ones like when the Milwaukee Bucks did Harley Davidson. That was really cool. That's a Milwaukee-based company. That was the old arena they used to play in. But when they did that, a couple of my friends that went to Marquette, and we've actually gone to a Marquette game there, and you see the jerseys, and they had like a whole display, and it was like a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and they had like a jersey and a hoodie like painted onto it, and it looked really cool. And you could see the fit, and I think it enhanced the fan experience. And I know it led to people buying Giannis jerseys like crazy, and there's data on that. But then on the flip side, you see like there's been teams. I'm a Red Wings fan, so I'll use them. They slapped a Priority Health patch on, and a lot of people didn't love that because it just felt a little random. And then they ended up going, I think they went like 0-9 immediately after that patch. So not only did people not like the patch because it just didn't seem to fit, but now cursed. your team, now they're calling it a curse.
Yep.
And the Red Wings jersey sales plummeted. And people like would go on social media and just beg constantly. These tweets were getting tens of thousands of likes of people saying, get rid of the patch, take the patch off. If you look, I have them on in the background here, no more patch. It's gone. So if you're a collegiate program, you have some case studies of what has gone wrong, what's gone right. But I understand it is a different world because professional sports and collegiate sports do have, your athletes are different ages. They see things differently. Recruiting players comes differently. Fandom is based in different things. Like football is very location, family oriented, whereas the NBA is individual oriented. So I understand there's differences, but it is interesting that there is a little bit of a case study.
And I also think you have to look at the people who are making those decision makers, how they respond to the people in the room. Of the NFL, in this case, looking at an NFL owner versus a college athletic director, which, it's the elephant in the room that football is what's driving college football and college sports right now. Is look at the difference between those two. Who do they have to answer to in that way? A lot of times you have an athletic director who has to answer to a lot of major donors. Many come from different business backgrounds, different industries. You can't just pick one of those, companies and move on. An NFL owner has a lot more autonomy in their position of, they own the team, they own the franchise, they'll run it hell or high water. in that way, is they'll be able to operate it, but they also do have some of those fan sentiment pieces. And yeah, like it's always the danger of you could have the best design in the world and the team loses. And then you kind of ask yourself, great, does it go back on the shelf? Is it called curse? Winning solves we always kind of say winning solves everything. If you win or if you have a big moment in a jersey, it will be remembered forever. And there's some schools that are actually afraid to bring out some of their like cool, different, unique designs because of the fear of them losing in it or the fear of it being caused like a curse. And I think that will be definitely, obviously the Red Wings, I've never heard the Red Wings example before, but I think that is a very real sentiment that could happen with jerseys. Or all of a sudden a company gets put on there and a team goes on a great winning streak, and all of a sudden, maybe that's called the good luck charm, and then it has to continue. I think there's so many different sides to this coin. And I know there's a lot of people that have, sentiment against jersey patches entirely, of they shouldn't be there. This isn't what sports is about. And especially if you look at the very tainted history of collegiate sports, of you look at, NCAA athletes haven't been paid for so long. Now you're, creating just another capitalization piece on it. It'll be interesting to see how long do we get until players have their own individual patches for their own individual sponsorships on their jerseys or on their equipment. I think that's like, well, I'll bring up an example of like Jeremiah Smith is an athlete that's signed to Adidas right now, who's at a Nike school in Ohio State. In the same way that NFL has Nike signed the NFL, but, players can still, Patrick Mahomes can still wear Adidas cleats. How long until Jeremiah Smith is going to be wearing Adidas cleats on an Ohio State uniform? I think that those type of pieces will be interesting too.
Like on that note, I had this question that came up in my brain that was like, not even Jeremiah Smith, not even player focused, but let's say a program, pick your program, is playing in a sponsored bowl game or a sponsored playoff game, like the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. I think I have that on our sheet. And let's say the program has their jersey sponsor is like Airbnb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very real conundrum.
Yeah. Like,
that would be hilarious.
How do we go through that? Or like, let's say there's a Pepsi and Coke thing, like how do we balance those?
And that's going to be the super interesting piece of it. Is that a playoff game or is it not? And let me be very clear. Speaking my personal opinion, I have no knowledge or anything behind this matter. But let's say, imagine the Pop-Tarts Bowl, for example. That isn't a college football sanctioned bowl game, so you won't be automatically seeded into the game based on where you have a selection process that they're going to choose the team that they want to be involved. And somebody has the, Frosted Flakes as their jersey sponsor for whatever reason. Could the Pop-Tarts Bowl? Yeah, they have Tony the Tiger on there. They're great, just right on their jersey. Imagine the Pop-Tarts Bowl having a discussion in their boardroom and saying, well, we don't want to invite, this team is next in line, but we don't want to invite this team because of that jersey sponsor, because they're in the position of power of the teams they select.
Right.
The playoff is a different discussion because they kind of get seeded into this team is closer, this team is on the bracket of who they're going to play when they get here. But I think that the other bowl games are going to have a whole lot more power. Or, you talk about revitalizing bowl season. It'll be interesting to see hey, maybe instead of you keeping your patch for the whole season, it alternates for big games or whatever those may be. And now when you go to a bowl game, that bowl game is going to offer you how many X more dollars to have more patches of that logo, or the logo be bigger on your jersey for then you to be able to play in that game. And then the players get some NIL kickback from those type of things. It's the possibilities open up, which means it's kind of like you're opening Pandora's box. There's a good side and there's a bad side to it. You could see teams looking like NASCAR teams walking out there with 60 million logos. You could see teams having really thoughtful partnerships like the Milwaukee Bucks and Harley Davidson that fit your culture, that fit your values, and you're able to create something special from that. I'm going to guess a lot more people remember those really good partners rather than maybe some that don't fit whatsoever. But then you're also going to have some schools that just kind of take the easy street and they're just going to look for who is ever offering the highest dollar value, and we're just going to pluck them from the shelf. I think that it'll be a mixed bag. And this is where I think you're going to see
Right.
teams with really good leadership rise to the top of being able to create the moment to be something special.
Well,
Something that I'm just, go for it, Farbode.
I think that's the part that I'm most curious about, is because college football, and we've talked about, we've already had the conversation about the NFL and the Red Wings and the NBA having them. But to me, college football is such a unique sport. And there's a reason we do this podcast. I'm an Angel fan. I'm a Laker fan. I'm like, in terms of my fandom, but I'm not an Angel. I'm not a Laker. I'm a Duck, like
Yeah.
I went to school there. I'm paying student loans to the university. There's an aspect of that university and that my experience there that makes like a fabric of my life is because of that. So I think part of where my hesitation came when this was even a possibility was, God, I hope they get it right, because I'm not going to stop buying jerseys theoretically, but I also wanted to balance with what I love. It's part of my identity. And like the Lakers have wish.com. I haven't bought a Laker jersey that says wish.com on it. I wanted to like, oh, this is either a really good cause, really good story. This jives with the state or with the university. And there's so many universities, like you said, like either balancing capital or balancing the meaning.
When you mentioned how you're going to have teams going for capital or for story or both, I wonder if teams that are a little bit more flush with cash have the luxury to take a loss in revenue if that means we're telling a good story and this is a meaningful sponsorship to our program and we're able to incorporate it well, versus if you're a school that's not quite as flush with cash, you might not have that luxury. And I wonder if that will be something that we see as a commonality, or if it truly is just the personality of the AD in the school that flushes that out.
Yeah, I think it's both. And I think you'll see, obviously the top schools have the luxury of choice. That's always been the way that college sports and even pro sports has operated. The Dodgers signing their 19th superstar to a deal that's going to last for 30 years. This sports is where a lot of the rich get richer. And that's where I think you'll see a lot of teams trying to get creative with their partner. How can that be able to elevate them in a really unique way? Or how can you bring a business more in-house to do more NIL deals with your athletes, to create a bigger foundational partnership? Doing a big deal with someone, all of a sudden they have a giant tailgating type of event that fans can be able to experience. And this is another thing of brand affinity for your teams. And I think Farbode talking about this of like, we're Ducks. Like, you see yourself as a Duck, but I wouldn't call myself I'm from Oregon, born and raised in Portland. Like, I'm a Trailblazer fan, but I wouldn't call myself I'm a Trailblazer. I would say I'm a Trailblazer fan. It's a different type of fan affinity. Yeah, but you're a Duck. It's a personal fan affinity piece that's really valuable. And that's where I think that teams and companies that are able to create their logo offerings that tend to favor said team, they feel more intrinsically a part of that type of moment. You look at colorways. I remember a whole discussion of a color scheme that matches a given team is much more likely to be successful than one that's just going to stand out. I don't know if it was the Celtics, but they had like a red GE patch. Or it was another team that had like I don't know if it was the Celtics, but it was like a really, really stuck out. And it didn't match any of the team colors. It didn't match any of the team branding. And I just kept thinking, this is where you're losing consumers, because they're thinking about the patch. They're not thinking about how you are a part of the Celtics family, how you are a part of, Clemson's family, LSU's family, Texas's family, Washington's family. How is that logo a part of your brand portfolio? So when I'm then as a consumer making decisions, I'm saying, wow, as a Texas fan, I need to go buy a Ford truck because, man, that's the brand that's a part of my family. And that's who I'm going to see myself with. Ford would be a great sponsor for University of Michigan. But all of these pieces in finding those affinities, I think, is really powerful. And I think that's why a lot of companies are really going to gravitate into the space to say, hey, I want to be considered as a big piece of the affinity, but it can't come inauthentically. You have to find ways to create those type of roots authentically. We use a term for Van Horne Brands. We call it DNA, distinct narrative architecture. which basically we've laid out like what are the roots that people have within fandom? What are the ways that you're going to be able to attach yourself to all of these different, teams and universities when you're either creating licensed product, creating uniforms, whatever it may be? This should be what a company is thinking about when they're designing meaningfully for a university or for a professional team. And I keep coming back to how are these people thinking about here's the X dollar value of who I'm going to be able to reach if I partner with the University of Michigan? Or are they thinking here's how I can entrench myself in the University of Michigan community? So when a 8-year-old, when they grow up and they're going to be buying their first car at, 18, 19, 20 with their parents, they think, well, I need to go to this, dealership, or I want to buy a Ford because they are a big piece of my family. That is where I think that separator will come, is how will these authentic inroads to universities be created? But then the lasting effects shouldn't be measured in 2 to 3 years based on returns. It really should be measured on a much longer runway of how are we creating and investing ourselves in this community of what's going to yield real returns for me in the next 20 years of the consumer. Because like we all remember going to a sports game and wearing a jersey for the first time. That's such an impactful experience with, a lot of young people these days of like I remember my first Oregon Joey Harrington jersey that I had, and I have a picture of myself sitting up in the tree at my parents' house wearing that jersey. That's super impactful for me. And having those type of things, then now saying this was a part of it during that time, can be super valuable for a business if it's done well and if it's done authentically to create those types of touch point relationships. There's a positive business sense to it, and I think no one, there's no argument against that. It's how will the university put up safeguards to prevent kind of, Jace, what you talked about of creating something that's inauthentic and creating something that doesn't meet the level of interest from the consumer in that same way.
All I'm hearing right now is that Indiana should partner with a cigarette company for Coach Sig, right?
Marlboro cigarettes on Indiana jerseys might upset some people in the trade commission. I'm not quite sure, or the advertising agencies. I have a feeling there will be probably some swift rules put in place until the first. Was it the Hoosier beer that?
So I actually was about to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Good. I think that's a conversation because look in my line of work too. We work with sponsors, sales all the time. I'm constantly looking at sponsor logos and how they should look on certain things, blah, blah. And I know like schools have sponsors and this is not a new thing. Like Alabama, you always saw that Coke bottle next to Nick Saban's podium. I do wonder, like, not beer, but if a coach gets asked, like, what's your favorite blank? And he doesn't remember that his patch is sponsored by their main competitor, how does that look? And how does that change up? But I do want to get into one thing with you in terms of like your process and how you help your clients. Storytelling a big point for me is like that's how you get college fans, because like I said, you're a Duck, you feel like you're going to support it more. Maybe you'll support them no matter what, and that's fair, and that's probably most college fans. But you'll support the brand, the sponsor more if there's a story behind it, if there's a reason for you to run through a wall for it, if there's a reason for you to believe in it. Where does that storytelling process, or even like the process of like a jersey design, begin in terms of like, do you have the story first or the design first, or how does that all mesh?
Yeah, really good question. We take on the process differently than a lot of people do because we like to start meeting with the athlete. We like to start meeting with the players because that's truly where you get authentic roots within the team, because that's who you're designing for. You're designing for the athletes to feel, a lot of times we want them to feel like superheroes when they take the field. And when they're, playing for their team, they're playing for their teammates, they want to feel like that design is a big piece of then helping them do that. And that's where we start hearing directly from the athletes, getting their pieces of feedback. What are those things that can separate or make things feel unique in that way? Like when we met and came up with the idea for the Shoe Duck uniform, that was something we talked to players about. And they said, hey, we all as a team read the Shoe Dog book together. That is something that we did as a team. We think that this story needs to be told. And we think that this could be something really impactful that we could be able to share with the world. And this shares our camaraderie and obviously everything that Phil Knight and Penny Knight and Bill Bowerman have done for this university. And it's a lot of those. It's coming directly from the athlete in our way. And that's where I hope some of these conversations start as well. Like, I think the athlete should never be discounted from those type of conversations of even, hey, these are some of the companies that we're talking about working with. Is there one that you feel an affinity to? Is there one that you think fits better within our brand than others? Because you're going to be the one that's actually going to be wearing that on field. You're going to be the one that's having to represent that when you're going out. It'll be interesting. And also in an era of, player empowerment, is there a patch? And this is actually a plot of Ted Lasso of, is there a patch or a jersey sponsor that the player doesn't feel like they want to represent or doesn't feel like it is reflective with their own values? That will be interesting. And that'll be a new hurdle to get across. And I think that good universities will consult with their athletes and with their teams to make sure that it is something that aligns with them, of making sure those type of companies and everything have those same level of brand values that the universities and the teams do.
The other question I had for you, it's mainly because this is partially like if you had a Venn diagram on my line of work and what we're talking about here, it's kind of that middle area.
Yeah.
When you're designing something, whether it's a patch, a uniform, whatever, like what you guys work on, the client wants it to look the best, arguably for the TV camera, right? Like for what it would look like for potentially when 15 million people are tuning in to LSU Alabama because you worked on X part of the field or this jersey patch for that team. You as the designer, and I know it from my end, you want the actual product to look the best, and if that doesn't always marry up well with the TV product itself. How do you find that balance?
Rigorous testing is where you find that out, because you have to be able to find that medium. I use the example of the Matthew Knight Arena court as something that we needed to make look good in person. And the old court did. The previous Matthew Knight Arena court did look really good in person. But a lot of people struggled with the television capabilities of the way the court blurred as you're moving up and down the court. And so during that entire process, Oregon set up a television camera that we were able to go back and look at all the photos and all the videos and be able to pan it back and forth when we're testing paint samples with Court Sport, who is the court vendor, going back and forth to make sure that that looked correct. Because we knew that we couldn't make the same mistake again, especially with how much investment a new court design takes. Those things are really important. And I think that it's, there's always kind of that middle ground. There's always that way that you can find a way to make something when you are standing 2 feet away from an athlete look really cool, look really premium, but also look at something from the top down from television camera and say, wow, that's really unique. I bring up Oregon's, Big Ten patches. We designed the patch going to Oregon's inaugural Big Ten season. We wanted Oregon to make a statement. We're in a new conference. We want to be able to make something shine. We're proud of this. So hence we took this metallic material that we wanted to match with the swoosh on either side. That was something that we had to get permission from the Big Ten in order to do, because they had like, okay, these are your slotted style guides. We're like, no, we want to do something different in the Oregon way. We want to do something different, but we want to be able to take that patch and even make it a more interesting piece of it. And then all of a sudden, when you see it on TV, it glows, it shines, it has like a shimmer to it that none of the other Big Ten patches do. And there's a way that you can be able to accomplish both of those things. And it just takes creativity. It takes time, and it takes the proper partners of being willing to try something different, but also being willing to try something maybe out of the box, unconventional. And I applaud, the Big Ten for saying, hey, Oregon's the school known for taking big swings. Let's try it. Let's see how it looks. And we had to prove like, okay, no, this is going to have the same visibility as all the other patches. And it's even going to look more premium that you've never seen on a college jersey before. And that was something, really that we were proud of. But, I think balancing those two worlds of, yeah, you need something to look good on TVs, even from a general university sense. Like, sports are the front door of a university. You become a Duck fan long before you become a student at the University of Oregon or in Michigan, Texas, name any school. that has a big athletics program. Those are big pieces, big recruitment pieces. So you need to make sure that that moment hits for all of the tens of millions of people watching, and the 8-year-old who's all of a sudden going to want to buy a shirt, a Duck shirt in Alabama, who's all of a sudden going to become a wide receiver for your team in how many years, and, you know, is going to help you win the Big Ten championship in your first year in Tez Johnson. Is all of those things are super impactful, and all of those things need to balance themselves into creating something that is iconic in that way.
I think the balance is a good call out, but I'll stick with teams that I know. The Detroit Tigers put a Meyer patch on their sleeve, and Meyer just changed the color of everything to match exactly the Tigers blue. Now, as a fan buying a jersey, it looks nice. You don't really notice it, but that's the key. You don't really notice it because it looks so fluid with the jersey. You don't even really notice there's a Meyer patch. And at what point, if you're the brand, do you say, are we really getting any action out of this? Do people really have attention drawn to it? Like you talked about the shimmer in the Big Ten logo. You look at that and it catches your eye. It looks out of place. It's an Oregon jersey. It's a Big Ten logo. It's bright. It looks good.
It took me a bit of adjustment the first year. Like I Oregon moving from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, it was shocking. And I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is the path we're taking. And then seeing them run out on the field with the Big Ten logo for the first time against Idaho, it took me a minute. It took me more time than I thought I needed to be like, oh, we're here now. It's not the Pac-12 logo anymore. Sorry, wild random story, but it took me a minute just to see that.
No, I know we only have a couple more minutes left, but going back to what you said, Jace, I think that's also one of the goals too of like having it be so seamless with the uniform. And like you said, the brand might be like, are we getting anything out of this? But I also believe, and maybe I'm completely off base here, if you showed a fan 3 years later of your team, diehard fan, a jersey without it on there, they'd be like, something's missing. And like that's how you know like the brand relationship, at least with the fan. I think there's an important part of like the brand has to matter. And it, like you said, Quinn, earlier, like some schools will go strictly capital. Some schools will just try to maximize the revenue. But I do think on my end of things, like fans, players, coaches that of schools that are most intentional about this process, who, yes, they'll get paid millions still. They'll get paid handsomely, but maybe not to the nth degree. Those are the ones that will be the most successful from this. That's how I'd feel.
Yeah. And I think, Jace, to your point of, it feeling so seamless, it's almost like you don't notice it. There are some brands that will view that as a very bad thing. They will be like, a front to God of, oh, geez, like we need to highlight this patch. It's got to pop off. We want the most amount of eyes on it as possible. The Seattle Mariners have the Nintendo patch on their jersey. That actually has a really cool story of, Japan and baseball and all those pieces.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, it stands out. And then there's others like the Tigers that sits back in. And there will be teams that stand out and there's teams that sit in, because it really comes down to, what is the company looking to maximize out of it? Are they looking to say, we want the most amount of people noticing our jersey and noticing our patch? Or are we looking for the most amount of people having affinity with our brand, having affinity with our patch? Because I think that if you look at, other examples of how does a team's affinity now translate to the affinity you have with a brand, will the seamless patch that, might be a little bit more understated be seen as a more positive takeaway than others that feel like they're coming over and taking our jersey? It's almost like how it's like kickers. You never know the name of a kicker until he misses a big field goal. You don't know your jersey patch sponsor until they do something bad, or they do something that you feel like is going to negatively press you away from that brand forever. And so that's where I think is going to be an even more interesting conversation of, I think, if you're asking for my opinion, if I was to start working with a brand that wants to do a jersey, I'd say we want it to be understated. We want it to feel integrated with the team. We want it to feel positive going into the team's affinity. We want to match logos. We want to, like, whether we can match fonts or not is a different question, but we want to match color schemes, absolutely, to create something that sits into the jersey that feels a part of its DNA and a part of its structure. From there, what we do with activations around it is where you truly create the positive ROI and you create all those things. The jersey patch is your foot in the door. But ultimately, what you do when you enter the room, I think will be more determinative of how you actually create your ROI, how you create your, how you expand your footprint, really, with all of the different things that you can do when working with a team. That's where I think brands will really capitalize themselves, and universities who find good partners will be able to do some really special things.
That's Quinn Van Horne, senior designer of Van Horne Brands. Made us all very much smarter today. Quinn, not to put you on the spot, but who's your top 5 for next year? Early top 5.
Man, it's going to be a really good year of college football next year, looking at everyone returning. Oregon as my number 1 going into the season with looking at the returning production. That's going to be super exciting. Texas is going to be up there. Even like LSU bringing in all the talent they have. Ohio State's going to be up there. I think Michigan's going to be a lot better. I'm interested to see if Cignetti can bring magic again. Like, obviously, he's had some of these players for a while. It'll be interesting to see what type of magic he makes, but it'll be super fun to follow along. I think that obviously so much of the last couple seasons has been dominated by conference realignment. I'm interested to see how this offseason takes on a new role of looking to now that the sport has kind of flamed up, had moments where it's been burned, had moments where it's need to change. How do we look at, doing a little bit of damage control and saying, here's how the portal is truly affecting our sport. Here's how our calendar is affecting how we do business. Here's how coaching changes are being affected. How can we go back and make these changes, truly looking at how do we benefit the student athlete? That's what I really hope the conversation comes by this year.
It sounds like we're having you on in a few weeks to talk about that.
Anytime, guys, I'd be more than happy to come back, and it's gonna be a fun year for everyone involved, and we hope we can just keep following the sport we love and keep following our teams.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Needs a consulting category. Let Farbo and I know. We can come in. We'll consult with the NCAA for you guys, and we can work on the schedule because it's fair to say that needs some change.
Yes. Absolutely. You guys will be my first call. I can promise you that.
Thank you so much for joining us. That's been Quinn Van Horne, senior designer of Van Horne Brands. We'll see him a lot more this offseason, I promise you, after that spiel. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Quinn.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.